запиту два слова «на урок». Ви здивуєтесь, як швидко знайдете те, що вам потрібно. Ви вчитель? Витрачаєте забагато часу, шукаючи цікаві та корисні матеріали? Просто додайте на початку.
Hello everybody. It's really good to be here today. I'm really happy to be talking for you again for Na Urok project. And today we'll be talking about drills. The topic of our today's talk is drills, or how to help our students memorize vocabulary and structure. In the first place, we're going to check our connection today. And in order to check connection, I would like you to answer the question for me. The question is right on your screens. Do you use drills in your classroom? If you do, please put a plus in the chat. Okay. Hello guys. Yeah, I can see some answers. That's pretty great. So as far as I can understand, you can see and hear me very well. That means we can begin. Here's some information about me on the screen, so you can find out some more in my bio. So what I want to add is that I used to teach solely in communicative approach, and with my later career development, I have incorporated other methods and techniques too. And we're going to begin with some theory behind drilling. We're going to speak about a good drill and examples of grammar and vocabulary and functional language drills that have worked for me and for my classrooms. And at the end of the session, we're going to have a question and answer slot. So, it's time for us to start. That's my favorite slide, I guess. I begin practically every presentation reminding my colleagues of the 3 P's of a grammar lesson and actually a vocabulary lesson, of any language lesson. That we begin, so we read the slide from the bottom to the top, and we begin every grammar vocabulary lesson with the presentation, then we go through practice, and we move on to production. And the rectangles are different size, as you may notice. And that's because the presentation is the shortest part, practice is bigger, and production is supposed to be the longest. And there are different kinds of practice. Practice is a slot that in itself consists of 3 other slots. And the first slot of practice is controlled practice. Then we move to semi-controlled, and then we go on to freer practice, which is similar to production. However, freer practice still has a task, whereas a production has a life-oriented task. Let's put it that way. So anyway, controlled practice is the type of practice that gives our learners a very limited range of options. That's either 1 or 2 correct options. And during our control practice slot, we correct everything. We correct every error that our learners make, because controlled practice is the focus on accuracy rather than on fluency. And when we move on from one type of practice to the second one and then to the third, the level of control decreases, And the variety, on the other hand, the variety increases for our students. And what do you think? If we speak about drills, drills fall into the controlled practice, semi-controlled, or freer practice. What type of practice is drills? So if possible, put your answers on the chat. What do you think? Drills make controlled, semi-controlled, or freer practice? Okay, I can see some answers. Well, I want to tell that drills are in fact the most controlled type of practice. They're never freer because when we drill, there are no options. So you want your students to give you the exact either translation or the exact form, the exact word that you're looking for, and you do focus on the form and correct everything. Whereas freer practice is when you give your students a situation. For example, you are a hotel receptionist and you are a guest. Please go and check in. Have a dialogue. That is the kind of freer practice. And a drill is, so once you have done your grammar presentation and you kind of focus on this form and you want to train it, yeah, of course, drills always have prompts, for sure. That these prompts make them a controlled type of practice. Now, the question is, why is that we're still drill? And in one of the slides later on, I will say that drills have been discredited and brought back into classroom practice a number of times. The main reason for that is that drills, they are an old-fashioned sort of type of practice. They come from audiolingual language teaching method with the underlying psychological theory called behaviorism. So, like sometime in the 70s, people believed that learning a language is like learning a correct behavior. You know, like children, when they learn to walk, they look at adults and they repeat exactly what adults do. And in the same way, it was believed, we acquire language. We just repeat somebody else's behavior. So children were thought to repeat their parents' behavior, and students in the classroom were thought to repeat their teacher's behavior. And then this theory, yeah, like pattern learning, exactly. And then this theory, of course, was discredited and other theories came into classroom practices, and so people and teachers went away from drills. Until cognitive psychologists in the 90s figured out that learning a language is similar to learning any other skill, such as, I don't know, driving or riding a bicycle. And at first, you get the knowledge, but you need the skill, because speaking and listening comprehension and writing and reading a foreign language, they're all skills, aren't they? So I wonder, what lies in between the knowledge and the skill? What is your idea? What is in between the theory and the skill? Okay. Practice. Yeah, most of you agree that that's practice, 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 and training. You're quite right, because there's input from the teacher or from, if you are immersed in the language surrounding, then from your environment, there's input, there's practice, and there's output. And how do we figure out that the knowledge has become a skill? As English teachers, all of you, like, I don't know, if somebody wakes you up in the middle of the night and asks you, how do you make a present simple question? And you're like, oh my God, it's question word, and then do does, and then there's the subject, and then you're gonna say that, and you're gonna, what time does she wake up? You're gonna say that automatically, right? You don't really need to think of it. You will just make the right question, won't you? Just in the middle of the night. And when you come to this level, it means you have the skill. So there is automaticity in between the knowledge and the skill. That's this moment when you can do it in the middle of the night. And by the way, under stress conditions as well. That's why if you have a true skill, exams are generally fine. I mean, yeah, they do stress you out. Yeah, you might underperform anyway, and your students might underperform under stress condition. But still, you do not lose the skill because it's automatic. And you can do it when you have a speaking test. When your learners get the speaking test, they can still do it. When they do their FCE test, they can still do it. And they can do it when they have their external testing, just because they have the skill. So it's a dream. Well, let's be optimistic. Yeah, by the way, I see there are some comments that for kids, there's play in between the knowledge and the skill. That's true. However, the drills that I'll be talking about today are more about teenage classrooms, starting from about age 12 or 13 and up. And I can see a lovely comment here that once you learn to swim, you never forget how to do it. That's it. A language is a bit different. It tends to go away if you do not practice. However, it doesn't go away completely. So, what is known about drills in modern language teaching? So, a couple of things that I hear on this slide I have already mentioned. That drills come from the audiolingual approach, and they focus on accuracy rather than on fluency. That means when you drill, you correct. And they have been discredited and brought back to classroom practice a few times. I said I already touched upon the reasons why this happened. Now, they can, but they don't have to be repetitive. We know, like, there is this idea about drills that it is when your students just repeat after you. You just say, he goes to school every day, and they go, he goes to school every day. But no, it doesn't have to be that way. Repetition drills are good for only pronunciation practice. When you teach your learners about connected speech, about assimilation of sounds and other features of pronunciation, and you want them to sound exactly the way you sound, that's when we could use repetition drills. But the drills that I'm talking about today are not only pronunciation drills, but mostly grammar, vocabulary, function. So they don't have to be like that. They can be meaningful. I'm gonna point that out when I show you my practical examples. That means the students, they don't just parrot, or they don't just do what they were asked, what you asked them to do. But they can answer a meaningful question in a meaningful way. And yeah, these drills, they help this middle stage. Remember, there's knowledge, there's automaticity, and there's skill. So drills, they help to automate. So they are the automaticity part. They contribute to automaticity part. And a good drill, so I put grammar and vocabulary, like I group them into grammar and vocabulary drills, but there also could be functional language drills. For example, when you drill how to make requests. So both grammar and vocabulary drills are short. That means you're not going to give a huge sentence for your learners. Just a short one is enough. They are based, the grammar ones are based on vocabulary too, basically. They are based on learners' current need. What is that here? If you notice that your learners are constantly making the same mistake. Racking brains. Yeah. They could. So anyway, if you notice that your learners keep making the same kind of mistake, they keep omitting the third person s, or they keep confusing regular and irregular verbs, and they keep ignoring the past form in a statement, that's when you stop and drill particularly this. Or, for example, when you have introduced a new grammar item. For example, let's say you've introduced a present continuous structure. And then there are certain sentences in the English language that are closely associated with the present continuous structure. For example, when we speak about clothes that we are wearing, I say, I am wearing a pink pullover today and a black dress, right? I am wearing, that's what we say. So our learners practically never say that. But we could drill and help them internalize this structure. And let's say you could do it as a translation. Він сьогодні у джинсах. В чому він сьогодні? Вона сьогодні в сукні. Діти сьогодні без шапок. Він сьогодні без плаща. And so on and so forth. Drilling just the same kind of structure in a slightly different way so that your learners have to just change the structure a little bit around. In this way that I have just explained, the drill focuses on just one structure. However, it could contrast two structures. If we follow this example with the clothes that we are wearing, you could go ahead and if you're sure that your students are confident with one structure, you could contrast two. Зазвичай він носить лише джинси. На весілля ми всі одягаємо красиві сукні, and so on and so forth. You see, so you could contrast the two structures. Like this. Yeah, the drill, if it's a grammar drill, include basic vocabulary so that your learners don't have to focus on other vocabulary, on like looking for the right words. Of course, that depends on the level of your students and on the, different variations, a different level of challenge. Absolutely right, Marina. Thanks for interacting. I appreciate that. So anyway, make sure that your learners don't have to just memorize, like recall some vocabulary on the go. Okay, let them focus on the structure. And that depends on their level, of course. You know what kind of vocabulary you have taught before, so you know your basis, what to rely on. Yeah, a drill is fast-paced. Like I showed, you do not, like I did this, you know, just like, so you ensure mild stress. You do not call out students one by one. You call them at random order and like, oh, you guys, and then, okay, that's you, that's Masha, and then Zhenya, and then Lena, and then Vova, and then like this. So nobody expects that it's going to be them. That's why that keeps them focused, and they have to actually listen. So if that's a vocabulary drill, on the other hand, you will you will work on a limited set of vocabulary. If before you only, like with grammar drills, you only look at one structure, contrast two structures, then here it's like, it's a selection of several vocabulary items. Let's say, I don't know, 10 or 15 or whatever you've taught. It will involve various structures based on what your learners already know. If they know the present simple and the present continuous, great. That's what you're gonna do, and you're gonna do question and negative and statement, and then a short answer at some point. Like, you know, so you're gonna rotate the structures and stick to this set of vocabulary items. My recommendation is to focus on collocations or collocations. What a collocation is like to afford to do something. Like, I can afford to do something, I can't afford to do something. That's how it works. I could afford, I couldn't afford, and so can you afford this? Like, and that's a collocation. That's practical. That's used. Your students can come across such a phrase if they decide to watch a sitcom. Like these days, it's becoming more and more demanded. Like everybody's really interested in English-speaking content. So you really need to choose this kind of practical language, not only what's in the school program, because that's not always what's needed in reality. So anyway, it's also fast-paced, like da 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 da, and it also ensures mild stress. I even do, if it takes my student too long to think of the right answer, if like the drill question is short and you got to think of an answer immediately on the spot. So I go like, oh, thanks. Then you, and then I return to the student then maybe with a new question, okay? Maybe the student was not very focused at that particular moment, and when he or she takes the pace, so you can return to the student and ask a question again. But of course, all is done in a friendly manner, and in that way, it involves all the learners in the group. So now we're gonna move on to types and the actual exampps. So, translation drills, the drills that I have just talked about. Like, він сьогодні без шапки, а вона у джинсах, а в чому він сьогодні, а в чому ваша мама, and so on and so forth. Substitution, that's when you give a sentence. For example, she plays the piano at the weekend. And then you go, we. And this guy, he transforms it for you. We play the piano at the weekend. And then you say negative. And this student, he transforms it into a negative structure. So we don't play the piano at the weekend. And then you say question. And then do we play the piano at the weekend? And then you say short answer. And they go, yes, we do. And then you give them a new sentence. And then you ask them to transform it again and again. Now, repetition, like I said, that's mostly for pronunciation practice, when you want to teach them about connected speech, assimilation, and other features, and you want them to sound more natural. And chain drills, that's when a whole drill is done as a group or a class. That usually works for smaller groups if you have about like 12 students in a group, so you don't get 35 students at the same time in the classroom, because otherwise that's not going to work. But anyway, here are some examples. So past simple, regular and irregular verbs. That's one of my really favorite drills. I actually borrowed it from a colleague who I'm really grateful to. So have a look. The problem with past simple is that we don't really remember when it is the second form and when it is the first form. And so you just go like, pив не пив. And the answer is drank and then didn't drink, right? So you basically use the two most important chunks of the two sentence structures. And then хотів, не хотів. Here I mixed up the regular and the irregular verbs. You could focus on just regular or just irregular. And so your student goes like, wanted, didn't want. And most often they will be confused in the first place. At first they were like, what? What does she want us to do? I can't remember, how do I say that? And then when they actually get the catch, you go, була, не була. And they go, was and didn't was, or didn't be, or whatever they say. And then, and they remember that it actually was and wasn't. And then they become more alert. And then you go again with думав, не думав, робив, не робив. So regular, irregular. And then again at some point, були, не були. And it's also were and weren't. So, you know, like it keeps them alert and it has to be fast. So translation drills, like I said, some of my favorites are I'm wearing, yeah, this, or he's wearing, you're wearing, are you wearing, is she wearing, do you usually wear like this? Also, all of our learners make mistakes with the verb agree. They just can't remember that it's a verb. And so I like this. Ти згодний, а вона згодна. Ти зі мною ніколи не погоджишся. And like this. Okay, thank you. So this will be another example of a grammar drill. You could pre-plan these, or you could make them right on the spot. If you just see that, okay, something is not working, then just keep making that same error. And you just immediately make them on the go. Okay. Yeah, and a present simple drill. This is a transformation drill that I talked about before. So like I ride a bicycle at weekends, and then she, and then a question, and then negative, and then another like play video games, and then change the subject. So it could be challenging. It could be quite stressful, but mild stress ensures remembering. You know how people remember things. They remember whatever connects with an emotion. If the class is boring and there are no emotions in the class, then the student is most likely to forget all about it the minute they walk out of the class. But if it connects with an emotion, even if it's like this emotion, like mild kind of stress, then this information sinks in and stays. There's some vocabulary drills. Yeah, I talked about, I agree with, я згоден, ти з нами згоден, вони не згодні, ніколи не погодилися, вона не погодилася. That is to practice that agree is in fact a verb, and that's a mixture of vocabulary and grammar, because you do choose, like you focus on just this one verb, and then you choose a variety of structure. Yeah, present simple is one of the hardest. I know it's hard actually for advanced learners. When you hear advanced learners omitting third person is, it's surprising, isn't it? So then I really work on the use of verb to be, because you know, in the English language we sometimes use a verb to be with an adjective, whereas in Ukrainian or Russian we use a verb for that, and that's a very confusing thing. Like we have запізнюватися, but in English it's actually M is R, late, and then for. Like цікавитися, but in English it's to be interested in, and that's also pretty confusing. So here, first of all, of course, you present. You put all these phrases on the board, you focus on how that works, and maybe not once, and then you could drill these as translation. Він запізнився на урок. А ви запізнилися на урок? Ні, ми не запізнилися, ми сьогодні рано. Ви цікавитеся історією? Ні, історією ми не цікавимося, ми цікавимося автомобілями, я не знаю. So you could first drill this as a translation. And again, that's a limited selection of phrases. And then you could go to this. This is more meaningful, like I said. What are you interested in? What are you worried about? And then you go like, Zhenya, what are you interested in? Masha, what are you worried about most often? Then Sasha, what are you often late for? What are you afraid of? And then once you've asked a variety of students these questions, then you do the second step. You ask, for example, you ask Zhenya about Masha. What is Masha interested in? And Zhenya will have to remember what Masha said, and actually that makes your learners listen, and that keeps them involved, because they know you're gonna redirect, you're gonna forward that question, okay? So they just can't sit like this and wait until you ask particularly them. So, here is an example of a chain drill. That's the drill. Yeah, you're right. Step 2 is really important, because otherwise they will just like, and then you like, Zhenya wakes up. No, it's not that way, okay? So you have to be focused and alert the whole time, and listen, and then be able to talk about others. So the chain drill is the drill that works for smaller groups, like I said before. So here I use the verbs of like and dislike. Love, like, enjoy. You could use more hate. Then and an ing verb form. So student 1 goes, I put spray painting. Student 2 says, talks about student 1, Kirill enjoys spray painting, and I love cycling. And then student 3 talks about the two of them. So Kirill enjoys spray painting, Masha loves cycling, and I like making videos. So here I would ask them to use like the words like love, like, and enjoy interchangeably. And yeah, they collect the information like a snowball, so they actually have to listen. But when you reach student 5, like this one, the orange one on the like snowball, yes. So when you reach student 5, the gray student 1 is already sleeping. At that point, it's a good idea to go back to the gray one, to student 1, and ask the gray one to repeat everything that has been said so far up to the orange one, okay? So the gray one isn't like dozing, you know, at that point. And then you move on to the end, and you could do this trick a couple more times, you know, there and back, so that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are still awake. And yeah, you could practice any structure like that, not necessarily these love, like, and hate verbs with the form. So just anything. Another example of a meaningful drill. So the previous one, you know, it's more meaningful because the students answer about their own, like what they like and love doing, right? So functional language is also more meaningful. So you ask your students to give you some options, like what you could do, give you some suggestions you could do, what you could do in this situation. At first, of course, you teach them how to make suggestions, and only after you drill. So I suggested only 2 structures here, but that depends on how many structures for giving suggestions you will teach. So here the teacher goes, I'm bored. Student 1 gives her a piece of advice. So you could go to the gym. Then student 2, like, why don't you meet some friends? You could watch a movie. Why don't you read a magazine? And you collect advice. Then you could do step 2 again, going back to the gray one, like student 1, and asking, what is Masha's idea? What is Lena's idea? And so on. Yeah, retellings. Retellings are great, you're absolutely right, but it isn't really a drill. This is called the reproduction stage. The reproduction, as you could hear, right, is not exactly production, because production is when you produce your own ideas, and a reproduction is when you reproduce other people's ideas, and they are great because they allow your students to take risks with the language, because otherwise they would not normally use new language. Using new language is harder. But when they retell, they have a good context, it is safe, and they could actually sound out something new to them. So that's why I love retellings too, but they are a little bit of a different stage of a lesson. Now, practical tips, how to drill and when to drill. So you don't drill at any point, because remember, there's presentation, there's practice, then there's production. So you don't drill at the production stage, you drill right after the presentation, because that's the first step of your controlled practice. Then you could give other controlled practice exercises, but the drill is usually number 1. Or when you notice that your students keep making the same mistake, you just kind of stop. And instead of correcting every student, like, no, Masha, it's this way, no, Zhenya, it's this way, and it's kind of the same, you just stop whatever is going on and you drill on the spot, just like you come up with it on the go and do it at any given moment. Now, how? It is very important to give a clear task. You shouldn't expect that your students will immediately understand what it is you want them to do. You just like point at the student and say, "Він у джинсах," and your students like, and what? Yeah. So you just explain. Right now, I'm going to give you some sentences that I want you to translate. Translate from Ukrainian into English quickly. Okay? The pace will be fast. And then you go ahead. Or transform my sentence with the word that I give you, like with the transformation drill. She likes to play the piano. They. But before, explain what is they and why you're saying it. Maintain a good pace. Make it fast. If it's not fast, if you let your students relax and think for too long, other learners will doze, okay? And they will not wait for you. They will talk to each other. They will like go to their phones or whatever. So you have to keep them focused. And yeah, ensure mild stress, like I said. Don't stress them out completely, but like focused and alert. Signal when a learner makes a mistake. For example, a learner makes a mistake and you say no and move on to another one. Another one gives you the right answer, then you return to the first one and say, okay, Zhenya, now say it right, okay? But like signal or make a face, it's up to you how you signal that your learners have made a mistake. And encourage self or peer correction. That is, do not correct yourself. Your learner has made a mistake, all right, but it's not your job to correct that mistake, right? Ask Masha, Lena, or Peter to correct. There will be always somebody who wants to correct, who knows how to correct. And then don't forget to ask the learner who has made the mistake to correct themselves now, to correct himself or herself, to say the right sentence. So the right sentence stays, okay? The right sentence sinks in. Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. So good luck with drilling. I think it's a great technique. It's pretty helpful. Yeah, remember that now it's put back into the language classroom because language, speaking and reading and writing is a skill, and a skill needs to be automated before it actually appears. So that's what it is. Now, I thank you for your attention, and now there's the time for you to think of some questions that I hope I could answer. Thank you so much. I appreciate your feedback.